What is up, blockchain gang? Today we're bringing you another tier list. However, this one is a little different, as we are ranking Web3 content creators on their ability to make a coherent tier list. It's not very hard to create a tier list, but there's a few things that you should do right, and there's a lot of things that Web3 gaming content creators do wrong. And so we're going to go over those today, and hopefully you'll be able to find better content creators through this exercise, or maybe the existing content creators you enjoy will make better tier lists. Starting up first, we actually have Bitbender, who is head of Gala Games and was on Crypto Stash's show, promoted a bunch of unreleased Gala games. And that's the first thing that's going to take you down, is to rate games on a tier list that have not come out yet. The games have to be out, the games have to be playable. If they're not, don't rate them. It's as simple as that. Or make a separate tier list that are games you are hyped for, which is completely fine and is not something that it should be conflated with games that are out that you're rating on their token or their gameplay. So what else did he forget to do? Well, in the comments, in the description, somewhere you should always make a list, a link back to your original tier, so that way other people can join in on the fun and make a similar tier list without having to upload all of their own icons. It's just an asshole move by anybody who makes a tier list. The next failure is that we did not mention Mirror 4, which undoubtedly is the #1 Web3 blockchain game and experience, and has been for the past 2 years. So let's go ahead and move them down one more. And the final thing is, what was the final thing? And the final thing that is their saving grace is at least he did explain what his logic was behind each of the tiers. Next we have KG who actually made a tier list of Web3 women, which was kind of a sexist and pig thing to do, and I believe that led to him blocking me or maybe some other content, so we're going to automatically knock him down a peg for that. Of course, I can't see the reasons for his tier list because he blocked me, so we're going to knock him down for that. I'm sure he didn't include Mirror 4 because he usually only covers crappy games with crappy tokens, and I bet he probably didn't include a tier list. So that is our first D entry there. Of course, they can always change simply by unblocking me and not being a sexist pig. Hey Zeus, he definitely did a really good job in a short amount of time in explaining so many different games. However, he did not include the #1 undefeated champ of blockchain games, Mirror 4. The other thing that we forgot to do is include the link back to the tier maker. And unfortunately, we also had some unplayable games in our tier list, which have no business being there. Up next, we have Eli, E-L-Y, which unfortunately, this was just a Twitter thread, so there was no explanation of why they put which games into which tier. It's a Web3 gaming tier with Web2 games in it, which is kind of odd. There's a most anticipated section, which I think is a great idea if you're going to include those types of games, but they also include games that are not playable, and they're not in the most anticipated section, they're actually graded. So I'm going to have to drop that one down again because there's no mention of Mirror 4, and finally one more time because there's no link back to the tier list. Here we have Danny Draghi, and of course we did all of those things because he knows how to make a tier list, so, you might want to follow and subscribe. Up next we have Inspector Mindblow. His tier list has great explanations on why. He also included Mirror 4 and by extension Wemix in this video. He did not unfortunately include a link back to the original tier maker list so we can make one with him, and he also is hyping up currently unplayable games. Next we have opponent of Web3 here in the Lore Reporter, who did not put any games on the tier list, which is just lazy if you ask me. They could have at least added them and putting them in the F category, and so what we'll do is bug them down for no mention of Wemix, no link back to the tier, no explanation of why they believe this way, although we've gotten into it numerous times before, but at least they did not have unplayable games, I can say that. Next we have Orangey, who for some reason made a tier list with 100 different games on them, and 90% of the games were in the don't know category, never played them. Of course, some of these games are hyped games that aren't officially out, even though there was about 100 games. Mirror 4, the best game to ever exist in Web3, wasn't included. On Twitter, there was no explanation for why they felt that way, and of course there was no link back to the tier list. Could have saved a lot of people a lot of work, Orangey. Here is another gag one from Sam Withers, who puts Illuvium in the S tier, mentions a whole bunch of games that are not important to them because all of their eggs are going into the Illuvium basket. And so I gotta knock them for no link. Gotta knock them for no mention of Mir 4, the Web3 game with the most concurrent players in the history of Web3. There was no reasoning on why he thinks it's the best, and currently Illuvium is an unplayable game. Crypto Stash, here we go. We have a pretty good tier with a bunch of good ideas on why they picked the games that they picked. A lot of unplayable games, unfortunately, that shouldn't have made it onto the tier list. No mention of Mir 4, unfortunately, and there was also no link back to the original tier maker list. Up next, we have a Twitter account by the name of Ardo, who decided to rank them all by the color of the game's logo. And I have to tell you, it's probably the most honest tier list there is in all of Web3 gaming. So while there are some things I should probably knock them down for, I'm going to go ahead and leave them up there. Good job, Ardo. And next we're going to look at Web3 Gaming Frontier. And I'm not going to knock them because they actually specified that these were for games that they were hyped for. So it's a separate tier list, which is exactly what you should do. Unfortunately, there was no mention of The Legend of Ymir, which is going to be the sequel to the #1 blockchain game Mir 4, which is obviously going to be the #1 new blockchain game when it comes out, as well as no explanation, but you don't really need an explanation when you're going over most hyped games. However, instead of ranking them, if you look closely, they're all ranked in the S tier. So I gotta bump and down one more for laziness. That's what I did. That's what I got. What are your tiers? What are you gonna rank them at? Go ahead. You can click on this link. You can create your own tier. You don't have to make your own thumbnails because I'm not a little bitch. And I'm not gonna make you do all of that work when I already did all of that work. That would be senseless. Thank you. Don't forget to like and subscribe so we can do this again sometime.